Welcome, everyone, to her comeback. I'm your host, Michelle Thompson, and I am so thrilled to have with me today Audra Phelps from Southeast Asia. Oh my goodness. So you're going to hear all about this story. Isn't technology great connecting Southwest Florida and Southeast Asia? It's amazing. So Audra found herself thousands of miles from home, literally, figuratively, after 13 years of living overseas and eventually leaving a faith tradition that she was raised in. Audra did what so many of our guests have done. She rebuilt, but she has taken it a step further. She built a whole program that's called Reclaim, and it's to help other mothers do the same because she knew that if she didn't do the work, she'd hand her children the very patterns that she was trying to escape. So I think you're going to really love this conversation. Audrey, welcome to the program. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself before we get started here?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yes, so I'm currently in Southeast Asia. I've been overseas for 13 years, but I'm transitioning back to the US for a whole career shift to do what I love, what I've been exploring for the last year. I am a coach for former Mormon moms. So that was
Ah.
the religion that I left, and it's a very difficult process to navigate. There's a lot of identity loss and grief, and then how am I going to raise my kids? Because I was given a blueprint. There's a lot of confusion and anxiety around that. And so I'm now a coach
Oh.
for those moms to help them navigate that process. And yes, I've been overseas for 13 years. I have three children who came overseas with me and
Mhm.
my husband as well initially. And now they're all adults and living in the United States. So I'm looking forward to being back in the same country as them.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. That's so cool. So take us back to the moment that you realized the life you were living no longer fit who you were becoming. What was that like?
If we go back to when I was still in the church and living in the United States, it was really a slow erosion for me coming to terms that the religion didn't align with who I was. Now, for your listeners who don't know a lot about the LDS church, it's a very high demand religion. It's not just a belief in God and you go to church on Sunday, it's your entire lifestyle. It gives you your identity from the time you were born, especially as woman, who you are, who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do in this life. It's also your social structure. So you always have an activity to go to. You know what you're doing on Sundays and Saturdays and Mondays and Wednesdays. And even the rules control what you eat and drink. And also a parenting blueprint. You know how to raise your kids, you know what rules to give them, you know what age that they should date. So for me, it was a slow erosion. But after I got married very young, because that was my purpose, was to get married in the Mormon temple and start having kids right away. So that's what I did. I got married at 20, started having kids at 22. And then fast forward a few years, I had three kids. We were living in Idaho, and I was really struggling with severe anxiety and depression to the point where I was having panic attacks almost every night. Panic attacks look different for everybody, but for me, it was like hyperventilating. I just couldn't get a breath. And I couldn't figure out why I was feeling so miserable and so unhappy. I was doing everything that the church was telling me would bring me happiness. I
Mm.
was a stay-at-home mom, even though I desperately wanted to work. I was reading my scriptures. I was going to church. I was praying. I was checking all the boxes, doing my duty to God. But I was in a really miserable place. And so, hindsight, looking back, that was my body screaming at me that
Mm.
I was in a life that did not align with who I was. But I had
Mm.
spent so many years pushing myself down, burying my doubts. I was told my doubts were sinful. I was told if I had a doubt, it's because I didn't have enough faith. I was told
Mm.
that the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I just needed to bend my will to his will, and the happiness would come in the afterlife.
Wow.
And I did all of that, but I was really miserable. And so what that did for me, even though I wasn't quite ready to, I wasn't there yet for leaving the church, but I knew something needed to change. I say leaving the church was like going from letter A to letter Z. Like I had to have all the
Mm,
letters in between. I couldn't just go, I'm all in, now I'm all out. Right. But what that did for me was I realized I needed something for me to give me a sense of independence. And even though the church was telling me that I needed to stay at home, I thought, I'm going to go back to school because
mhm,
I need to figure out who I am and what I like. And I'm going to think of a career for me because this is something I knew that I needed. And so I had the courage to go back to school to start a career, which is already against the grain.
So
But I
you were
was
still in.
I hadn't left the church yet. I didn't actually make the decision to leave the church until we had moved overseas and
Okay.
we had been overseas for a couple years. So that was a big wake up call for me was the
Mhm,
going overseas. So I started a career as a high school biology teacher.
mm,
And I chose that career not because I really wanted to be a teacher, but because I was still in the church. I still had that conditioning that my place is home with the kids. I'm a nurturer. And so I thought nobody's going to look at me sideways if I'm a teacher because I won't have to put my kids in daycare. I'll have the same schedule as them. So
mm,
I had the courage to follow a career path, but I didn't make a choice that was really aligned with me. And I never even really went down the road of what is it I want to do. And
yes.
but what that did was that gave me the opportunity to, my husband was also a teacher. And so that
Mm,
gave us the opportunity to start teaching internationally. So 13 years ago, we picked up our kids, ages 7, 9, and 11, and we moved overseas. We moved to a country called Kazakhstan, which most people don't know, and most people probably would never move there.
yeah.
But that is where I gained the courage and the strength to really objectively look at my life. And I was given this physical separation from the church. So I was outside of the minutia of it, the day to day. Didn't have people knocking on my door if I didn't come to church on Sunday. And I could start to objectively look at those beliefs that I had and the messaging that I'd been getting and what that messaging was really telling me and doing to me. So that
Mhm,
physical separation allowed me to see it objectively. But then the second thing that moving overseas did for me was I was now exposed to the world. And
absolutely. Yeah.
I could see such a variety of religions and cultures and nationalities. And I had a real cognitive dissonance. I would go to a Hindu temple or a Catholic cathedral, and it would feel sacred and spiritual. And the followers were so happy. And I thought, this goes against everything that I was told. I was told Mormons are the only ones that have happiness, and Mormons are the only one with sacred places. All those other places are really just deceptive. And so I started to see the world objectively and see the variety of different ways to believe and the happiness. And I realized that the world wasn't right or wrong, good or bad, that there was a variety of different ways to do life, and all of them were beautiful and right for the person living it.
So you
Yeah.
said you were still in the church when you went
Yeah.
overseas. Did the church approve this? Did they say it was okay for you and your husband to move overseas to teach? Were they in alignment with that?
Yeah, they don't dictate moves
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. And there was a very small Mormon church actually in Kazakhstan. It was mostly run by the missionaries because in the
Uh-huh.
Mormon church, young adults go on missions to try and
Uh-huh.
convert people to the
Mm-hmm.
Mormon faith. And so the
Sure.
church was mostly run by missionaries, and there was maybe 10 members. They were all Kazakh. They spoke Russian. So we did actually attend the church a couple times, but it didn't feel right. So in a lot of ways, my family members, when we moved overseas, I was the youngest of five, and a lot of Mormons go on a mission. I didn't go on a mission because I got married young, before the age that woman could go on a mission. And I remember they thought that it was temporary, that our move overseas was going to be temporary. And my sister actually said to me, "Oh, you finally get to go on your mission." And I thought, no,
Ah.
no, maybe a different kind of mission than you're thinking. Yeah.
Just listening to your story here, I can just only imagine the huge shift that you must have been undergoing in this, going from the life you lived here, because it's not only just getting out from under the church, so to speak, but the culture and being in a different country, everything was flipped
Yeah.
upside.
Yeah.
How did that help you find your sense of identity? What would you say that really led you once you were there to know who you are and what you wanted?
That's a really long process. And I think identity is really a lifelong process. I'm
Mhm.
still learning things about myself. But what that did was I was able to observe other people, other ways of life without judgment. I could be
Mm.
curious, but not judgmental. So when I made the decision to leave, I was very clear that I am not Mormon. So I knew who I wasn't, but I didn't know who I was.
Yes. Yeah.
And so at first, it was just exploring, talking. I
Mhm.
just loved talking to people. Luckily, I was in an international school where I could talk to people from 20 different countries in one day if I wanted to. But I loved just making friends with people and with from different places and just diving into their background and who they are and what they believe and how they came to that conclusion, and just then starting to pay attention to how some of
Mhm.
those beliefs felt for me, and really tuning into my body, because I had learned to distrust my body for so long. I had pushed down my own inklings, the things that didn't sit right. I pushed them down for so long that the first thing I had to do was learn to trust my body and pay attention to when things felt open and expansive, and follow that. And if
Mm.
something felt constrictive and tight and uncomfortable, then there's a belief there that doesn't align with who I am. And
Yeah.
it was a lot of practice at first, because especially as a woman, and not just women in leaving a high demand religion, but I think a lot of women in general, we have spent our whole life serving others, thinking that we are responsible for everyone else's happiness.
Yeah.
And so I had to start really small, because if you would have asked me when I first left, what is it you want? What do you want to do? What do you want to be? That was too big of a question, because at that time, you asked me what I want for dinner, a simple question, and my response would have been, I don't know, what are you having? I don't know,
Yeah.
what do you want?
Oh, I can
Right?
identify with that. Yeah. It's the
Yeah,
codependence because you're dependent on
exactly.
everybody else. Yeah. Mm.
Exactly. So I had to really play with paying attention to myself. And it started really simple. Okay, I'm going to open the fridge. Do I want the apple or do I want the orange? Which one feels good? And then as I got practice with that, I could start to move into those bigger questions, to pay attention to how it felt in me, and then paying attention to emotional triggers as well and what I could learn from that.
Where did you draw your courage from as you were in this space? What kept you curious?
I think for me, it was that I didn't want my kids to feel the way that I felt growing up. So that was really what gave me the courage. Because when I first left, the biggest question I had was, how am I going to raise my kids? What kind of a mom am I going to be? Because I basically just
Mhm.
threw the blueprint out the window, but it's the only model that I had for raising kids, right? It was how I was raised, and then it was what the church was telling me was the best way to raise kids. And I had to throw that out the window. And I had a lot of feelings of unworthiness. And I learned quickly that the church was very conditional. I was worthy if, I was loved if, I would be
Yes.
happy if. There was so many ifs, and I didn't want my kids to ever feel that. So that's what kept me on this road of reconstructing myself. And when you leave a high demand religion like that, there's two things when you leave as a mom. You have to go down the identity road. Who am I? You have to deal with the grief. You have to deal with the guilt. What are these emotions telling me? But then you also have to think you're raising kids at the same time. And I felt like I was growing up alongside my kids because I kind of had to mentally go back to the age of when your identity forms and start all over again. So I was really growing up with my kids at the same time. So what I did was I threw myself into what kind of a mom am I going to be? And now the woman that I coach, I say, you really need to do the two things simultaneously because
Mhm.
parenting is a subset of who you are. And so the courage came from, I don't want my kids to feel the way I felt. I want them to feel freedom and independence. And I want them to feel that they can come to me without judgment. And so I threw myself into that at first.
So there's one of the things that you talk about, the word reclaimed. Why
Yeah.
that word specifically?
Because growing up in a high demand religion, you have no claim over your own life. And you're told who you are, you're told your purpose. And when you leave that, it's about reclaiming who you are, reclaiming your life, reclaiming your purpose, reclaiming permission. You give yourself permission now. You can have desires that are your own. You can have passions. You can reclaim what kind of mom you want to be and how you want to raise your kids. You don't have to be looking to an external authority anymore. You can be the own authority in your life and the only authority that matters. So that's why the word reclaimed has resonated with me the most. And that's why I've named my program Reclaimed.
That's great. And tell me about what is the pattern that you see most often in the mothers that you work with?
There's a lot of self-doubt when
Mhm.
women come to me. They are, because of that external authority, they've always been looking to an outside source to tell them what to do, how to be, what to eat, what to drink. They come to me with a lot of self-doubt. They don't know how to trust themselves. And they're also living on a conditioned belief of what a good mom is. They've been given this definition of a good mom, what a good mom is, what a good mom does. And that takes a long time to rewire that pattern because it's in their subconscious. And so anytime they start to feel mom guilt, often it's because they're living according to a definition of what a good mom is that was given to them and it's not their own. So we do a lot of work paying attention to emotions, paying attention to something that feels triggering, naming that emotion, paying attention to how it feels in your body. If it feels constrictive and tight, then there's a belief there that's still running, that conditioning is still running in your subconscious, but it's not aligning with who you are. So we do a lot of work, a lot of questioning, a lot of journaling to dive into what that belief is. We poke holes in it, and then let's come up with a belief that feels good to you, that does align with who you are.
Yeah. And so I love that. And so you use NLP and a
Yeah.
neuroscience-based coaching. So
Yeah.
can you break that down for someone who's never heard those terms?
Yeah. So NLP stands for neuro linguistic programming, and that is essentially the language of the mind. So the conscious mind is it's all the thoughts that we're aware of. And that's basically a story that we tell ourselves based on our lived experience. And so as your mind is taking in new information from all of your different senses, it takes in the information that fits with the story that we're already telling ourselves. And NLP helps you get into the subconscious mind because the subconscious mind is like the unabridged version
Mhm.
of all of the information you're taking in from your senses. And then it gets filtered, and then you become aware of only the pieces of it that fit the story that you're already telling yourself. And so NLP helps you dive into your subconscious mind, which is where your identity resides. It's where your beliefs reside. It's where your values reside. And those are the things that are really running the show. And they're determining your conscious thoughts and conscious behaviors and conscious emotions. So we dive into how the brain works, the language of the brain, and then we use that to how your lived experience is being interpreted. And then we can actually start to rewire things so that your conscious mind becomes aware of different things that you weren't before. It's really powerful work, and it really helps with those deeper levels of identity and values and beliefs.
So, how would you say guilt shows up differently for mothers who've left this high control religion versus women who've just drifted from how they were brought up? What would you say is
Yeah,
different?
that's a really good question. There's a lot of fear. So when you are raised in a high demand religion, besides the fear of eternal damnation, which is probably the biggest one, but
Mm-hmm.
besides that, also you're raised that the world is dichotomous. And what I mean by that is good or bad, no in between, right or
Yeah.
wrong, no in between. And you are right and everyone else is wrong. And so if you don't
Mm-hmm.
follow this path, then the alternative is very extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And so women come to me and they still have this all or nothing, in or out, right or wrong mentality, which is creating a lot of fear because they're afraid of these consequences that were drilled into them from the time they were a young child. And they have a fear of doing it wrong, huge fear of doing it wrong. They have a fear of being a bad mom, a fear of eternal damnation. And again, they're looking to that outside authority to tell them what to do, really, because that kind of takes the responsibility off of them, right? And I'm following what I was told. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you leave a high demand religion, and that religion told you that what you're doing now is wrong, that's a well-worn habit, a
Mm-hmm.
well-worn pattern in your brain. And
Right.
so you have to learn how to create a new definition, how to realize that the world is not dichotomous, that you can come up with something that feels good. And you have to learn how to be the only authority in your life, the only one who needs to give you permission to do anything.
Yeah. Love that. That's right. In your niche, you specifically for Mormon mothers, you've said that the conversation here, the deeper conversation is
Yeah.
universal. Where do you see that universality show up the most?
As women, many of us have that conditioning of people pleasing
Hmm.
and being responsible for other people's happiness. And if your kids aren't happy, then it's up to you to do something to make sure that they're happy. Or if your husband's not happy, serving your husband. And I often tell this story about 8 years after I had left the church. So I'd been out for several years. I'd been doing some of my own identity work, but it never ends. It just
Yeah.
keeps popping up. And I think a lot of women would relate to this. I was making Thanksgiving dinner and I still had the conditioning that trad wife, it needed to all be from scratch. Everybody needed what they wanted, all the sides, and everyone needed to be taken care of on Thanksgiving. And I was making apple pie from scratch, make the crust the night before and blah, blah, blah. And I was cutting up the apples. And I was starting to feel really resentful. Why am I making apple
Mm.
pie? This is taking so much time. I'm so exhausted. I don't even like apple pie. And that made me go, wait a second. Okay, then why am I making apple pie? I make apple pie because it's my husband's favorite. Then he should be making the apple pie. But I went down this rabbit hole of, okay, then I'm making this because it's my husband's favorite. I make it every year because it's my husband's favorite. What kind of pie is my favorite? And I
Mm,
didn't even know. I
mm,
didn't know because I had spent so many years as a wife and mother making sure that everyone else was happy, everyone else had what they wanted, that I didn't even know what I wanted. And so that's a universal experience for a lot of women who have to do it all, a lot of women raising children. Society tells you that the pressure of everyone's happiness in the family lands on the mom. And
mm,
so it's definitely a universal experience for a lot of women. And for me, the identity loss and the reclamation of who I am first came after leaving a high demand religion. But many women feel that when they change careers, when they move to a new place, as their children are growing up and they become empty nesters. So a
yeah.
lot of those feelings are very universal.
Yeah, totally agree. I certainly see that in the women I work with as well.
Yeah.
Another thing you mentioned that self-trust is a destination. What does self-trust actually look like in a woman who's gotten there? What would you say to that?
I would say a woman who's gotten there is able to observe without engagement. So many times, the circumstances of what's happening to us, we become instantly reactive. That conditioned emotional response is the first thing that shows up. But when a woman has really started to dive into who she is, and she's confident in that, and she's trusting herself as the only authority in her life, when things happen, she's able to observe it and pause and choose a response instead of being emotionally overreactive. So you gain that control over
Mhm,
your emotions and behaviors, where before maybe you felt really out of control, just like a ping pong ball, right? Like always at
mhm,
the whim of what was happening to you.
right.
And so it's being able to recognize an emotion, recognize what it's telling her, and then respond from a place of peace, not from a place of reactivity, because that's the habit. That's what self trust starts to look like.
So, for the woman today listening right now who recognizes herself and the things that you've been describing here, what's the first thing she should do? Not eventually, but today. What's the first step?
It goes back to what I was saying earlier. Start paying attention to your body.
Mm,
Your subconscious mind speaks to you through your body first before your conscious mind has a chance to catch up and then talk you out
mhm,
of it.
mhm,
And so I say, start paying attention to your body and things that are happening around you. Pay attention to what feels constrictive, because that's telling you something doesn't align, and what feels expansive. And then if you notice something that's constrictive, like maybe it's something with your kids are asking if they can do something and you're not quite sure, and or there's just some sort of a belief, you're feeling guilt about something and you're feeling constrictive, start asking yourself some really good questions. There's very few situations that you need to respond to right away. So you can take some time to stop and journal about it. And so one of the first questions I have women ask is, okay, what's the emotion here? Then it's, what's the belief behind that's giving me this emotion? And then
mhm,
once you can identify the belief, it's, when did I decide that? And usually it's, if it's a conditioned belief, it's sometime back in your childhood. And then it's, who gave me that belief? And if the belief didn't come from you, then it
mhm,
came from somewhere else, and it's not something that aligns with you. And so start poking holes in it so that it's not an absolute truth in your subconscious anymore. Is this always true? Is there ever a time that this is not true? And as
mhm,
you start to poke holes in it, that's when you start to rewire your subconscious mind. And actually, a lot of women start to feel dizzy. You can really feel it. You can
mhm.
really feel it. Your subconscious going, oh, wow. Oh, wow. And then pay attention to what is a better feeling belief here? How do I want to feel? And if you can land on something that feels expansive and light and open, then you know that's something that aligns with you. So that's really powerful work that you can start doing, is questioning an emotional trigger and paying attention to how you feel in your body.
I love that. That's great. D- Tell me, what does spirituality look like for you today?
Spirituality for me looks like tuning into myself. It looks like being open to change. I believe that there are a lot of beliefs out there, and every belief is right for the person who believes it. As long as you're not hurting someone else or someone's not hurting you, there's 8 billion people on the planet. Why can't there be 8 billion right ways of doing things? And so I see spirituality as taking in the beauty of diversity, taking in new opportunities, appreciating the beautiful planet. Being in nature for me often feels very spiritual, and giving myself permission to tune in to the things that feel good to me.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. It's really interesting. I have a book coming out this week,
Ah,
Courageously
great.
You. It's 7 simple frameworks to create the life you love. And there's a chapter on spirituality. And I've had quite a transformation myself. I did not grow up in the Mormon church, but I grew up in a strict independent Baptist household, which has a lot of similarities to the things that you described. Not everything, but there's definitely some parallels there. And so it's just very interesting hearing your journey and how you have transformed, evolved into the person that you are today, and allowing yourself to be open. And I've had a similar experience as well in my
Mm,
own spirituality, and really being open and then finding that higher power that works for me and that's meaningful to me. So I just
yeah.
appreciate your description, and just hearing your story about all of this is very fascinating.
Thank you. It's good to share. And one reason why I share is because when I left, I was so alone. I didn't know anyone else who had left. And I was navigating this grief of loss of identity, grief of loss of friends and family. You lose a lot of people when you walk away from a church like that. And then how am I going to be a mom? I was petrified. And I didn't have anyone to hold my hand and say, hey, I got you. This could look really great on the other side. Let's walk through this together. And so that's why I do what I do, is because I know that there's women that are feeling those feelings that I felt 11 years ago. And I want them to know that I'm here, that you can have a mentor to walk you through this, and that you can move through the grief and the anger and the hurt, and you can come to a place of peace and certainty and confidence. So that's why I share, is just to help women who are going through this and they feel very alone.
Is there anything else you'd say specifically about the Reclaimed program?
Yeah, the Reclaim program is an 8-week intensive program. There's a
Hmm.
curriculum that you go through that has videos and worksheets that works you through a lot of this identifying old beliefs and rewiring. And so we at first kind of deconstruct, we uncover a lot of those old beliefs that are there. And then we reconstruct, then we find the new beliefs and we work on boundaries, and we come up with a new plan and how to do this with your kids as well. And in the Reclaim program, it's not just a curriculum, there's also group coaching. So you have a community of other women who are going through the same thing. So you don't have to explain yourself and explain your background. We all just get it because we all were raised in the same religion. And then there's also individual one-on-one coaching calls with me. And so it's very transformational. And the women that have gone through the program just have come to a place of peace and confidence, and it's amazing. So
Oh,
if anyone's
that's
interested,
great.
you can head on over to my website, which is mamaaudra.com, and watch the masterclass. That's the first step.
Yeah. And what is the best way for someone to contact you? Is the website, or what's the best way to get in touch?
The website's the best way. You can go onto the website, mamaaudra.com, and The free masterclass is there and you can schedule a call with me. So on the
Mhm.
masterclass page, there's an option to schedule a call to see if we're a good fit. But then I'm also on all the socials as Mama Audra. So you can follow me on there too if you just have if your curiosity is piqued, but you're not quite ready. Yeah, you can follow on socials.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. I really have enjoyed our conversation today and hearing about your story. It's quite amazing and just fascinating. So thank you for coming on and sharing. And I wish you continued success in your work and all of the best of luck in your move coming back into the States. I know that's got to be quite the undertaking.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here. You have a great energy, and I love that you create this safe space for women to share their stories. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate that. All the best to you. Thank you.
Thanks.
I hope that something landed for you today because you were meant to hear it. Now, if that conversation stirred something in you, I just can't wait until you get your hands on the book, Courageously You. We go deeper into frameworks with stories and reflection questions and tools to actually do the work, not just be inspired by it. Here's what I need you to do right now while it's fresh. Go to the link in the notes, her comeback, sign up for the updates, hercomebackpodcast.com. Again, that's hercomebackpodcast.com. Courageously You will be available on Amazon starting June 25th. Set a reminder, mark it on your calendar, and tell a friend who needs this information as much as you do. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for showing up here week after week. It's exactly the kind of courage this book is talking about. Keep coming back. Your comeback is happening. Until next time, I'm Michelle Thompson, and this is Her Comeback.